Thank you for having us here. My name is Aurora Davidson. I am the CEO of Amerigo Resources, and I'm very happy to be here presenting to you our company, which, as you mentioned, is quite unique. So I'm going to start the presentation now. Okay, so Amerigo Resources is a profitable long-term copper producer in Chile. And our tagline is that we transform environmental liabilities into an economic asset. This is quite important. We produce copper in a very unique way by processing the tailings from the world's largest underground copper mine, which is Codelco's El Teniente mine in Chile. Okay, so those are our forward-looking statements, and then we're going to move on to this presentation of why do we call ourselves not a mine, but a copper factory. When I explain Amerigo, I think the easiest way is to say that Amerigo is a copper factory and not a mine. Our plant in Chile receives all of the tailings that are generated by El Teniente from its daily production, and those are called fresh tailings. We also have the rights to historical tailings that were deposited by El Teniente over many decades of copper production. So what we do with those tailings is that we process them through a traditional concentrator plant, and then we produce copper concentrates. We are actually the only operation in the world that is fully focused on processing tailings on a large scale. In 2021, Amerigo produced more than 60 million pounds of copper. And one final point of that introduction is to mention that we are highly levered to copper prices and generate substantial cash flow under the right copper price conditions, as you can see from our presentation today. We are a historical copper producer. Our plant in Chile has been producing copper concentrates in this way since essentially 1992. We have a strategic partnership with Codelco, which is the world's largest copper producer. And we also have a long-term growth strategy with a focus on shareholder value. This photograph here is a view of our operation in Chile, MVC. As I mentioned before, this is a long-term operation. We're not new to the industry or to the market. Amerigo purchased MVC in 2003, and at that time, our copper production was about 26 million pounds of copper a year. We have increased that production dramatically. In 2020, we produced 55 million pounds of copper. We had a guidance of 60 million pounds for last year, 2021. We actually produced 63 million pounds, so we produced over guidance. And we also produce molybdenum as a byproduct from both the fresh and historic tailings. But our main focus, of course, is the production of copper concentrates. One interesting aspect about our operation is that we have a long-term power supply agreement, which is comprised 100% of renewable powered energy, green energy. And that has allowed us essentially to lock in the power rates until 2037, which is when our current contract with Codelco ends. So our major cost being power, we know what that cost is going to be from now until the current term of our contract. People always ask, well, how have you had this long-term relationship with Codelco? And the answer is very simple. It's a mutually beneficial relationship. For us, it's fantastic to be a partner with the world's largest and strongest copper producer. Codelco produces 11% of global copper. They have 10% of known copper reserves. What we do through our arrangement with Codelco is that we have the contractual rights to El Teniente's tailings, and in return for giving us that contractual right, Codelco receives a royalty which is based on production and copper price. So they are an economic partner in our business, and therefore this is a relationship that brings them that economic benefit. But Codelco also gets to report our production as their own, So that's also another element that has been important in establishing this mutual and long-term relationship with them. And of course, our operation provides Codelco with a material reduction of environmental footprint through us providing them with cleaner tailings. Our business model is a very simple business model. It has been built on more than $300 million of investment by Amerigo at MBC since 2003. So we essentially have invested what we needed to invest to have an operation that can produce these levels of copper. We're not looking to do any major expansions. We don't require any further major capital investments going into the operation. What we do then is that we maximize the production by managing a mix of fresh and historic tailings. And the other aspect of our operation is cost management. So even if it doesn't sound too exciting, it is important to produce at the lowest cost that you can in order to maximize your margin. Our operation in Chile has a low sustaining capex. We only require about $6 million of capex per year to maintain our operations going, which is quite unusual for within the mining industry. Mining companies usually have a stronger requirement of sustaining capex. Now, this is what is interesting about our operation and what I want to highlight out. Amerigo is a copper pure play. We are highly levered to copper prices. Under copper prices below $3, we survive. We have been in operation through many cycles of copper, and we have been able to survive. But when you start getting at copper prices over $3 per pound, we generate substantial cash flow from operations. And this was the guidance that we presented at the start of 2020, where for different copper prices, we have projected different EBITDA, or earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. The actual copper price in 2021 average was $4.22. So we're just stuck in the middle of that line between $4 and $4.40. And we haven't yet published our financial results for the full year end, but for the first 9 months of 2021, we produced EBITDA of $60 million. So that was quite substantial. And actually over the guidance that we had projected at the beginning of the year. What are we doing with that extra cash that has been generated by our operation? We have an active return of capital to shareholders program. We reinstated a dividend at the end of the year in Q4 of 2021. We started paying a dividend of 2 cents Canadian per share. That's 8 cents Canadian per year. Considering our year-end share price, that represents a yield of 6%. So we are actively returning capital to our shareholders via dividends. And we're also in the process of having active share buyback programs. In 2021, we did a substantial issuer bid. And we also have an ongoing normal course issuer bid to repurchase shares in the market for cancellation. Our strategy for replicating the business model of MBC, it's actually quite simple. We believe that there is a rinse and repeat model that can be applied. And the reason why we say that is because every mine has tailings. And tailings have recoverable economic elements to that, as we have proven with the MBC case. We have tested this business model, and we see that there are other opportunities to do an operation similar to what we're doing with MBC in other locations. For example, there are still deposits at El Teniente that we don't yet have the contractual rights to. So that's an easy target to focus on. There are other 6 mines with Codelco. And of course, there are major copper tailings deposits throughout Chile, which could have a similar partnership model as what we have established with Codelco for processing their tailings and recovering copper from them. We are a sustainable copper producer. It would be hard to find another model of real confirmation of sustainable green copper production other than MPC. On one hand, as I mentioned, we have renewable powered operations, so we're using clean energy to produce our copper. We're producing copper out of a waste material, so we're minimizing environmental impact and being true participants in the circular economy. And by reducing tailings and repositioning tailings from one location to the other, we reduce environmental footprint and environmental risk. So these are just 3 examples of how our operations fits very, very, it's very aligned with sustainable copper production. Copper, we believe, has entered a bullish cycle. Copper will be required. It's a top element that will be required to decarbonize the world, build a greener economy. Sustainable energy sources require a lot of copper in their setup. And this green demand, we believe, and a lot of experts share that view, is expected to surpass the demand that came in the early 2000s from China as a strong demand for copper. So we're seeing that the demand for copper could be substantial in this decade, but also the constraint on how to supply that copper is real, it's existent. Major mining companies are facing declining grades, declining productions, substantial operational challenges. So at the same time that the copper will be needing and is needing more copper, there will also be that crux of how do you supply for that copper. So processing from tailings is one of the obvious answers, and we are just in the middle of that operation with our business model at MVC. Our capitalization table, we're still tightly held, not so much as what we were before. About 62% of our shares are not held by insiders, and we have 3 big investors holding a substantial amount of the company, plus management and directors, where we hold 5%. So the Amerigo business and investment proposition is very simple. We have a consistent return of capital now established through which we're returning capital to our shareholders via dividends and share buybacks. That's unusual. There are no other mid-tier copper producers that have an active return of capital strategy to their shareholders. We're a pure play copper producer. We're highly levered to copper prices. I just showed you some of our interim results for 2021. Again, EBITDA of 60 million in 9 months, a net income of 31 million US, earnings per share of 17 cents US, 22 cents Canadian. So those are very strong results for a mid-tier copper producer. We have low capex. We have a very simple model with very predictable EBITDA and cash flow. We're very well positioned in the world's largest copper producing region, which is Chile. And we have a unique story in respect of environmental, sustainable copper production with substantial growth opportunities throughout Chile. Some of our additional information, as I mentioned, we pay a royalty to Codelco in return for having the access to tailings. It is tied up to copper prices. This is an example of how that royalty reflected into the payments to Codelco based on the different copper prices throughout the year. So as I was saying, with an average copper price of $4.20, for example, we paid a royalty of $1.24 per pound to them. Moly, we produce moly as a byproduct credit. In as much as moly prices are strong, they contribute to our business as well. Moly prices had a strong appreciation in 2021 as well, so they contributed to a reduction in our cash cost, which is the way in which we represent that economic benefit. And water supply is a big topic for Chilean copper producers. Water is scarce in Chile. We have been facing drought conditions for a number of years. We have strong water reserves. We can store water. You can see behind me part of our water storage capacity at MVC. So we know that we have sufficient water to carry out our full 2022 production program without any disruptions caused by lack of it. So that's important. And in respect of management, we have a very lean management team. Myself as president and CEO, the founder of the company is Dr. Klaus Zeitler, executive chairman, Ms. Carmen Amezquita is our chief financial officer, and we have a fantastic general manager in Chile, Christian Cáceres, who leads our team there. We have a board of directors comprised of 7 members, myself included, and that essentially is my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions you have for me.
Sure, Aurora, just in time to have a couple of questions. The first one coming from Ernst is asking, what if the Chile will nationalize all the mines? Is there a risk to your business?
We don't have a mine. We basically have the contractual rights with Codelco, which is a national company of Chile. Codelco is a state-owned copper producer. So the risk that would apply to other privately held mining corporations does not apply in our case.
Perfect. So last question from Beverly. You started giving out dividends recently. Do you think it's sustainable long-term for your business?
Yes, and that's why we set them up at a level of 2 cents per share. We believe that a dividend has to be sustainable under the different pressures of the copper cycle. We believe that the current dividend rate that we have will allow us to do that, and that has been a key objective of the board, to have a sustainable dividend.
Okay, just one last question here. I'd like to put you here. Amerigo has been around for some time. Why should investors care about it right now?
Because it is generating substantial cash and returning cash to shareholders. The fact that we have been around for a long period of time is a plus. It's not a minus. It speaks about resiliency, and it speaks about the ability to sustain the hardships of copper cycle. So this is exactly the time when you want to invest in Amerigo, at the time when it generates substantial cash flow.
Indeed. Thank you, Aurora, for your time, for answering all the questions here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.